at the Georgia Department of Economic and Community Development. She was the Senior Manager of Finance for Home Depot and the Executive Director of Georgia's Regional Transportation Authority. And I don't know if anybody in here from Georgia? Jannine, you came to the Upper Midwest. You don't have any Georgia colleagues here.
I got North Carolina.
Yeah, that's right. She is a two-time alumni of Georgia State University. So help me welcome Jannine Miller. She's going to visit with us a little bit about what the administration is thinking about and looking at on rural infrastructure, and she was particularly interested in exploring some of the partnerships that are happening up here in the Upper Midwest. So, Jannine, I turn it over to you. Thank you.
You guys are too kind to haven't even heard me talk yet. I might be leaving before I'm done, which is altogether okay, because I think we're going to run out of time here. Am I okay on the microphone? We're good? Okay. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. This is a very exciting opportunity to come to the Upper Midwest and to hear from the folks who are on the ground doing the wonderful, important, vital work that is necessary for... Is that better? Oh, there we go. I can talk loud enough. I was actually born in New York, so I'm not shy. But it's wonderful to be here, hearing from all of you who are out here doing this important work that's so vital for Minnesota, for Wisconsin, for South Dakota, but throughout rural America. As you may know, Secretary Perdue has made rural broadband one of his top priorities, and whatever we can do at USDA to support rural broadband deployment, we are doing. It might not be all that exciting, might be a lot of work behind the scenes, it might be a very long process, but there's a lot that needs to be done. So this is an exciting opportunity to be out amongst the real folks. We are doing great work in Washington, but it's so important to understand the aspects of the projects on the ground, the challenges on the ground, the opportunities on the ground that we'd otherwise miss if we're just inside the Beltway. So thank you for being here today and taking time out of your day, your businesses, and your organizations and your lives to be here with us. I also want to thank the organizers of this, Constance Coleman and the Farm Foundation. This would not be happening without her team's efforts to bring everybody together, to bring the right folks to the table, and to put at the forefront the idea and the notion that partnerships are a very important path forward for rural broadband deployment. We also would not be here without our associations supporting NTCA Rural Broadband Association and NRECA, National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, as well as CoBank and CFC. You all out in the field are the ones who represent your members and do the financing of these very risky, otherwise risky projects, and are vital in informing us and advising us of the right approaches that we can take at the federal government level. But I also need to thank, of course, Minnesota and Wisconsin for you all leading the way. There's a reason we're here first. This is our first of opportunity to come out from Washington, and thank you to Laura for being here, representing Commerce and NTIA, because the best practices that you all have been working on developing, cultivating, and implementing are really do shine a light for other states, even us at the federal government, to understand what works, what doesn't, and how to implement that in big ways. So I've taken a lot of notes. I'm looking at a lot of notes from today, and I thank you for that. And I can't wait to bring some of this back. And but I do want to start with with a very clear articulation of why we're doing this, why rural broadband is so important. It is the 21st century modern infrastructure that the entire country deserves. It is not just a telecommunications challenge, although it is inherently that. It is vital for our communities throughout the country to succeed today, to succeed tomorrow, and truthfully, if we don't achieve the connectivity for broadband that we need throughout the country, we will not have the prosperous future that our entire country, that all of America deserves and needs. as we go forward for future generations. So we took a look at e-connectivity and broadband most closely and put it at the forefront when we were doing the Agriculture and Rural Prosperity Task Force efforts. On the Secretary Perdue's first day in office, he had been given an executive order by President Trump. And that executive order said, wield everything that we can within the federal government to understand what rural prosperity needs are and how the federal government can do our part and partner with others to support rural communities and rural economies. So we didn't go about it looking for broadband as the top priority. We certainly didn't, but we found that of the 4 tracks of work that are necessary, the 4 real pathways and work streams that are related to economic development, workforce, innovation, and quality of life, none of those things succeed without broadband e-connectivity. They just don't. So that became call to action number 1 in the Agriculture and Rural Prosperity Task Force report. Highly recommend you take a look at it. It's on the internet at usda.gov/rural prosperity. And you'll find there about 4.5 pages at the very front of the report all about the importance of rural broadband and e-connectivity. And what that report did for us is put it as e-connectivity as a priority, but also laid out sort of a roadmap of the reasons and the steps that we need to be taking. Of course, there are things like broadband for education. So education for K-12 students. It is simply not acceptable that our rural students that are in the preschool and K through 12 don't have the ability to upload their homework, to download the educational videos at the same speed and reliability that urban and suburban students can. That divide needs to be bridged. The healthcare possibilities that exist with telehealth, telemedicine, anywhere from prevention to monitoring and treatment, and as was mentioned today around keeping our elders at home as long as possible to support their quality of life. Imagine if we're able to have nursing home visits virtually every day for 30 minutes instead of once or twice a week. Imagine the ability for the modern telecommunications, that is that video backhaul that's necessary to engage with a specialist. Even if you went down to your local clinic instead of and had an appointment set up in 30 minutes, you're there, rather than having to drive 3 hours away and wait 3 weeks for that appointment to even get on the calendar. This is tremendous potential for rural communities and rural citizens that we simply have to put out there and make possible through broadband. There's also, of course, the social interaction and economic interaction, e-commerce that's necessary. You need the highest speeds possible to run a business reliably. If you can't be there for your customers, you can't run a business. And the way to be there for your customers in the 21st century is with e-connectivity and broadband. So these are things that are laid out in there, but we also want to make sure to articulate what's important about a very important industry for rural America, and that's agriculture. Precision agriculture is going to transform the way that we in America are able to feed our own citizens and to continue to feed the world as the population grows. Yields can be increased, cost and inputs can be decreased significantly. Additional markets can be accessed if broadband e-connectivity is available. We're starting to really dig into the research that's out there. We know that field crops and specialty crops have the potential to have incredible benefits in field monitoring, with whether modeling the weather, monitoring plant health and whether pesticides are needed and if they're needed real time and where they're needed, rather than having to spray the entire farm. You can imagine the benefits there. Yield monitoring, where is the best place to harvest, rather than just going out where we might have a notion to, but really being precise about that. Precision seeding and fertilizing. Soil mapping, these things are getting taken up throughout the country, and it's important that it is that the work is occurring today. But broadband will really, really ignite the possibilities of real-time connectivity, of major data flows. In fact, there's a variable rate technologies we know can save $22 an acre on inputs alone. So we're also seeing livestock farming. Precision livestock farming is really an important and vital future technology for the agriculture industry. If you're able to, as was said earlier today, if you're able to monitor where a cough is occurring, maybe extract that head from the herd, but you can also, the hog farmers today can tell if with precision livestock farming and broadband connectivity, real-time monitoring with video surveillance and automated intelligence are able to indicate whether the pigs are coughing because they're just coughing or because they have a disease or they need an antibiotic. We can extract them or treat them or not treat them. They can know in the middle of the night if the pigs need to be fed, where right now today everyone's sleeping, but that expedites those livestock to market. So the potentials are enormous. We know electrification 80 years ago was the call to action. We had no idea how important refrigeration would become in the economy. So that is the type of analog we might think about as we're just putting broadband out there and unleashing the potential of our rural communities. The inventiveness, the resourcefulness of rural America is being left on the field, is being left on the table, and it simply has to change. And so that is why we're doing the work that we're doing in Washington. Also, it's good to begin with kind of the problem statement. So my very high-level evaluation is that, first of all, we haven't really done a great job of making the business case for these investments. The costs are very high. The investments are risky. Distance and density aren't there to really underpin the revenue streams that are needed to support the costs. But we also haven't, we as a country haven't indicated the fact that once broadband is there, it will be taken up. Affordability is vital, yes, but there's a notion of stated preference versus revealed preference. Stated preference is always lower, far lower than revealed preference. Once it's there, the uptake becomes tremendous. I see that the take rates, if we can begin to prove in the data that take rates for broadband service, once available at affordable prices, can actually reflect the reality of what occurs out there, we hope that the financiers will be more interested in investing and taking the risk. We know that there are institutional barriers too. This is not just a government or public sector problem. It's not just a private sector problem. It takes us both working hand in glove together at all levels of government. So this is, the federal government can do a lot, but it can't do it all. And certainly I think a lot of it needs to be done at the state, local, and private sector level. So we also institutionally don't know, in the marketplace don't know where the demand and supply actually exists. We don't know the gap. So it's also hard for the private sector to decipher where is it that I want to prioritize where I invest? Where is it that as a government that I want to prioritize my very finite tax dollars to have the most bang for the buck? Those indicators are not clear, and yes, it will be wonderful when we have updated maps, and I'm very appreciative, excited about the work that's being done at Department of Commerce and to refresh that map at a nationwide level. The state level work is vital too. Danny, you're exactly right that there's so much about state government, and that is my background, is in state government, that as we know in rural communities, whether it's quality of life, productivity, economic development, is based on broadband. There's so much in economic development and prosperity of a state's citizens that the state governments, where they are able to get involved, like Minnesota and Wisconsin and others around the country. where you all are able to get involved and infuse your resources to really fine-tune where the needs are as best you can is absolutely vital. So we are hoping for additional state governments to get involved in the work as well. But governing models even differ by state. So there are some states where if you're able to have electric co-ops have the freedom to decide whether they want to do it on their own or partner with the experts in the field. We know that broadband is not a core capability, core competency, or core business of electric cooperatives. But the infrastructure that you all own is vital to going forward, especially in an era where there's not a lot of right-of-way and easements are hard to come by. So the partnership between electric cooperatives and telephone cooperatives, telephone companies are very important as well. So those are just a few of the takeaways and things that we're learning and trying to work through and work with at the federal government. But so what can we do at the federal government level? Well, facilitating interstate commerce is one of our core constitutional requirements. So in interstate commerce, that is what this is all about. This is the digital superhighway, the interstate highway of the 21st century that the federal government can and should be involved in supporting infrastructure in that way. As role as senior advisor for rural infrastructure at USDA, that is what we think about this as something that is to be produced and installed for future generations going forward. And we think also the federal government can address the really deep issues in this very complex industry that cross state boundaries. So a few things that we're working on and doing, we've got some activities we're doing at USDA. We're federal government-wide, the Omnibus Act of 2018, which is the federal appropriations bill, gave a lot of agencies a lot to do in broadband and rural broadband deployment. And we're all working more closely together than we have in the past, where our missions and deliverables need to and naturally do intersect. So I'll talk a little bit first about that interagency coordination. There's a group called the Broadband Interagency Working Group. Yes, that's a mouthful, but it really is indicative of the fact that this is agencies working together. We have been at this for several months and even goes back years now. We are in those last batches of really hard work that need to be done, evaluating where we have federal funds throughout dozens of agencies. How can we better coordinate so we're not peanut butter spreading around, but really synergizing that? So we're evaluating the efficacy of federal funds throughout agencies. We're working to reduce regulations, mostly in the permitting space, and availing federal lands and federal assets to telecommunications providers. There are, particularly in the West, we know that so much of the land area that needs to be covered is in federal space. So there's a lot of work going on there. Again, building foundations, not a lot of things coming out of the ground yet, but you'll start to see that soon. In other agencies, as I mentioned, Department of Commerce is working on mapping. They also have recently been directed to begin streamlining facility installations. Those of you who are the telecom providers in the room should look to Department of Commerce to where they're looking to make it easier for you to get access to all kinds of federal lands more short order rather than systematically, which is the interagency working group. The Department of Education has a student support and academic enrichment program that's new. The Health and Human Services Department has a pediatric mental health care access program and telehealth centers of excellence program. The Department of Transportation is even now has an opportunity for new grants for roadway projects, railway projects, where if a project comes in and that local or state sponsor of that roadway project says when we open up the right-of-way, we will notify the telecom providers in the area so they can build broadband in the same right-of-way. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So we're excited about what DOT is doing there to really lead the charge there, and hopefully we'll work more throughout the rest of their programs, as this is kind of a pilot that they're doing. For the first time, DOT is interested in this, so congratulations to Secretary Chow and thank you to her staff. So really exciting stuff there. At USDA, We every year have about $800 million of funds that go out, federal funds, that are available for telecommunications in rural areas. Mostly, it's almost all focused right now on broadband. $800 million sounds like a lot of money, but it's not. It's really, unfortunately, not. And the programs that we have are very fine-tuned for very small population areas. So sometimes they're always applicable where the need is, that rural gap. And those are not always easy projects or programs to apply for. So we're working to make those a more customer-friendly process. When companies and localities come in to apply for these grants and loans, we're looking to make it a more interactive process, similar to the way private banks do it. So we're working to be more customer-friendly there. But these dollars are not able to fill all the gaps. Nor will the new program be able to fill all the gaps. So I'll close with this before opening up to questions you all may have. So we're very thankful to the White House for recommending new dollars come into the federal program for rural broadband at USDA. We're very thankful to Congress for the appropriations of $600 million in the Omnibus Act. They have been also very helpful to us in giving us a very solid framework, but giving us a lot of flexibility to be responsive to the needs that are out there in ways that our current programs just simply aren't able to be. So what that means is we know what entities are eligible. All of a sudden, that list for $600 million becomes a much longer list of eligible entities than we've had before. So almost any organization can come to us once we open up the program, can come to us and apply for these dollars. It's very exciting. We also are going to be able to set it up in ways that we're going to be able to fund areas where the risk is high, where the private sector isn't yet able to go in and put their own private capital at risk. So it will allow us as the federal government to play our part in going to where the private sector can't, to catalyze the private sector to do more. They've done this by allowing us to do grants and loans and potentially combine them together. This is what worked really well in the Stimulus Act, that combining of the grant and loan option that we have not had since then, but we do have with this. This is a fraction of the total dollars versus the Stimulus Act, but we can take lessons learned from there in the things that worked and some of the things that didn't. It's something that the Secretary has articulated and vocalized how important it is to him not to overbuild. Look, we understand private sector has put their own money at risk. We do not want to have government dollars in there competing for that. But also, we only have $600 million and we have a really big need. So we have a lot of areas to cover that aren't getting service at all that these dollars can go into. So where is overbuild? Well, anything that's 10-1 or less is an eligible area. So if it's got 10-1 or above, it's not even eligible. If it's 10-1 or below, it is in the space that can be receiving of the dollars. So 10-1 is not a build-out speed, though. It just says the areas that are eligible. So that was another thing that was left unspecified in the law that we're looking for input and feedback on. What I do know is some very, very good statistics we heard earlier about the Netflix test. While the broadband needs out there, as I said, are very much about prosperity, productivity, public policy outcomes. Yes, telecommunications industry and the entertainment industry can give us a line of sight into what matters to them, therefore what will matter to telehealth, to telemedicine, to distance learning, to ag, Internet of Things, and productivity. So that line of sight, to me, says with Netflix at the minimum threshold to get any service is 3 megabits per second, right? So that says to me that if 3 needs to be good enough download, 3 needs to be good enough upload at a minimum, right? So that's kind of an indicator there. With these modern technologies, and we are trying to build for the future. We do not want to be in the same scenario in 10 years from now that we're in now, which is we had spent a whole lot of dollars, and now we just couldn't keep up with technology. So we're trying to figure out the best ways to parse through that, because we know that there's a lot of geographic diversity. There's a lot of areas that might not be able to fully afford or be able to install the highest fiber technology. So these are things we're going to have to be sorting through as we set up the program. We'll be looking for public comment on all these things, and I'm very excited to hear officially, in addition to the notes I've been able to take today, what you all and your communities are needing out of this program. So there'll be a Federal Register notice, and we're hoping to also have a web page where folks can give us their feedback. So both a very formal, structured setup, as well as anybody who happens to have an internet connection on a mobile phone anywhere can easily tell us what your thoughts and needs are related to this program. So we're diligently working to set this up. It's a one-time program, so we're not going to be hiring a lot of additional workers on the federal payroll to do this. So we've got to stand up that system appropriately. We're also getting our IT systems refined and improved so that it is the most customer-friendly application process possible. So lots of work left to do there, and once we are able to publish the Federal Register notice and hopefully the website as well, we'll be sure to get the information out to your communities about signing up there and letting us know what your thoughts are. So lastly, in closing, I just want to say that we want all of us to use the most, make the most of what we have. Use the infrastructure that's out there as much as possible, rather than building new structures and digging different and new holes. The most efficient and effective way to do this is to partner with each other, to use what we have together. We are all in this together. It's going to take all shoulders to the plow, literally, to get this done. And something that Secretary Perdue used to say when he was governor is it's important, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. So what that is rural prosperity. It's possible for future generations. It's possible for this generation of rural communities. Our future as a country, though, mandates that our rural communities are built up and stood up and vibrant, wonderful places to live again. So thank you for being here, and I'd love to take any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Jannine? Well, Jannine, you had indicated that you're going to be taking public comment as well. Is there any other mechanism for folks to be able to share some concerns? And, this listening session was really about that. But if there are other, casual ways, are there other ways to reach out, or would you prefer that people use that public comment for the record?
Once we open up the public comment, it's going to be very easy to engage on USDA.gov on our main web page. So it's not going to be hard to find once we open that up. That way we can collect everything in a central bin and be able to sort through it in one place.
Fantastic. Yes, question over here.
It's really just a comment. So my name is Bree Mackey, and I work for Senator Tina Smith. I just want to say that we're so happy you're here as a fellow Minnesotan. And all of you here, we're so proud of the work that they have all done, a lot of them in the room. And the accessibility for us to be able to do our job, much like you, is without knowing what's happening and the hard work that's happening on the ground and the communication you all give to us, we can't do our jobs and we can't do it well. So
that's right.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
I want to reiterate that this whole conversation started when Jannine and I and the folks from NRECA and CoBank and CFC and NTCA started talking about, what are some of the most critical issues facing rural America. And Jannine was one of the most passionate advocates for figuring out how we address this e-connectivity issue, and was really instrumental in wanting to hear what was happening in rural communities, what was happening in states around the U.S., and what the concerns were from people who were dealing with that on an everyday basis. And I will not lie. The Upper Midwest in Minnesota was the first place I think everyone wanted to come. So really appreciate Jannine's partnership on this and the commitment of USDA and the administration to this issue. Thank you. Yes, that's what I was going to wrap up. So I really wanted to thank all of the excellent comments and questions and input that we received from all of you today. Really good stuff. And what we've done is we have recorded this, both video and audio, and we will be posting this to our website, hopefully with a few of my bad jokes edited out. But we will be posting it so people can go, they can pull pieces from it. They can share it with folks. We really encourage you to do that. We will also be transcribing this conversation and turning that into a report that we will share with USDA, that USDA can share with its counterparts throughout the federal government, as well as making sure that state leaders receive that in the areas in which these conversations are held. So we really want to make sure that the concerns that you all expressed, the possible solutions that you all shared and approaches are captured and shared with people who are working in this area. So once again, thank you all very much to you. A nice thank you to Jannine and to our two panels and the participants, but most importantly, again, thank you to all of you for coming out and sharing the concerns about broadband and e-connectivity. Have a great day.